Hey guys, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome back to the Wetlands. Today we're going to be building a Nile Lechwe habitat, but before we do that, I'm doing a little bit of cleaning and tidying around the zoo in order to make it ready for a very special visitor. We are having a guest builder. I am so excited about this. I mentioned, I think a few episodes ago, that one of the plans for the zoo was a flamingo lake that's going to go in the centre of the zoo as a sort of centerpiece. And I saw on Discord the other day that one of my absolute favourite Planet Zoo creators was in the market for doing a guest build. So I asked if he wanted to do a build in the wetlands and he said yes. So next week's episode is going to be a guest build from the amazing Romano Palacios. If you're not familiar with Romano Palacios, he is famous in Planet Zoo circles for his amazing landscapes. He's actually been on my channel before. He built the unbelievable recreation of Yellowstone National Park that was in the North America episode of Planet Wild. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video if you've not seen it. The guy is absolutely amazing and I am very, very excited indeed to see what he comes up with in the park. Anyway, let's get on to today's build for the Nile Lechwe. So a couple of weeks ago we built the wild water buffalo habitat, and you guys in the comments on here and Discord and Reddit seem to really like the custom fences that I built. So I thought the first thing that I'd do today is show you exactly how to build that custom fence. So I start with a 4-meter wall piece just to get the scale, and according to the Zoopedia, the Lechwe need 1.25 meters of fence to prevent them from jumping out. So I'm going to raise this about 1/4 meter. So we've got a height of 1.25 meters altogether. And then the pieces that we need to build this are not in the construction tab, they are in the habitat tab. So we're going to hop over to there, type log into the search bar, and this brings up my favorite fence pieces. So we're going to be using the thin climbable logs and the normal climbable logs to make this. The normal ones for the sides like this, and then the thin ones for the logs that join between them. And we're just going to make the sort of normal wooden fence you see in any zoo, but for reasons unknown do not see in Planet Zoo. And that is going to give us a really nice sort of basis for this habitat. These are climbable logs, so I mean I can't think of a reason why you'd build a fence like this for an animal that could climb. But just be aware that as in real life, if you put anything that can climb in with a fence like this, they're going to climb out straight away. So we'll delete the fence piece, we don't need that anymore, and then let's put some mesh in to stop anything from getting underneath these wooden posts here. So I'm using the small mesh piece, sink that into where we want it to be, and then we'll just duplicate this along the bottom here, making sure it lines up so it looks nice and consistent. And when you get to the end, it'll overhang a bit, so we bring it back on itself and line it up nicely. And that's your fence. Group it together once you've got it all in a group. Depending on which way you're going to go, delete either the left or the right hand post so that when you start copying it round, you don't have an unnecessary piece. And that's pretty much it. So let's put this everywhere. We're going to lay out a big habitat for the Lechwe, and I'm purposely going to have the fence go through the big water area that we have here, because the whole zoo should look like it's been built in the Everglades, which is full of water already in this part of it. So this lake hasn't been man-made to fit this habitat. This is water that was already there. So we don't want an enormous habitat where the guests can't even see the Lechwe unless they get really lucky. So we're going to have the fence actually go through the water and adjust the height where necessary so it still acts as a barrier. And there we go, fence is done. So I'm just going to make a few adjustments to this last little bit here so there's nothing janky going on. And then we will move on and build a shelter for the Lechwe. So this is based on a house that I found in South Sudan, which is where the Nile Lechwe live, along with Ethiopia. Really old house from an ancient town, which is, I don't know if it's you know, super ancient or if it's been built in this traditional style of that area, but this is certainly some really old architecture here, and it had some really cool painting on it, which you can see here, and the whole thing is sun-baked and falling to pieces and cracked, and it just had this really cool sort of old African, it's been in incredible heats for centuries kind of look to it. So I decided I wanted to replicate that for this habitat, and get something appropriate for the Lechwe. I'm using the African plaster cones from the Africa pack. They're really good for this build because they come in 3 different sizes and they're all really irregularly shaped. Yeah, there's just not a proper straight line anywhere on them, which is really useful. So I'm using them for this doorway here, and then I'm going to use them again to make the actual walls as well, because they sort of slope back on themselves, and then with that irregular shape you can copy them around and get a wall that doesn't have the sort of straight lines that you'd normally get if you used one of the wall pieces, which is going to be really useful for this build. I think they're built out of, I don't know, maybe clay or mud or something like that. So yeah, there's not a straight line to be seen, and I want to replicate that for this build. I started off building it really big. I think I got a bit carried away, so later on in the video you'll see it get a lot smaller when I realise how immense the build is. And again, I'm just going to use those same pillars upside down to create some towers at the end, and then just fill these walls around. So we've got a nice sizable shelter for the Lechwe. They're pretty shy, so we want to make sure they've got a lot of places where they're not in view of the guests if they're getting a bit stressed out. And they're just using loads and loads of the African pieces, and the round pieces I think are from the Australia pack, to get some designs on the walls. All this painting is copied from the actual real building. I've tried to give it a sort of faded look like the real building, and we're going to go crazy with the decals as well, so it's all covered in mud and scratches and just super weathered is the look that I'm going for here. I've tried to make the colours of the painting pieces as desaturated as possible as well, so they look like they've been in the sun for centuries. And yeah, just cover everything in decals, which I'm always tempted to do with all builds, but I have to sort of, you know, restrain myself, especially when I want something to look modern. But with this build I can just let loose and put more decals on than I've ever used before. It really can't look weathered enough, to be honest. Now, hands up who knew what a Nile Lechwe was before the Wetlands pack came out. My hand is not up. But I consulted my centuries of accumulated knowledge, i.e. Wikipedia, and discovered that the Nile Lechwe, there's actually some debate about whether it's even should be called a Lechwe. It might be just a completely different species. I knew what a Lechwe was. I've seen them in zoos before, but I've never heard of a Nile Lechwe. But yeah, apparently there is debate as to whether it should actually get like a completely new name. But they are really cool when you put them into the habitat. They're sort of half deer and half goat, which is quite a cool look. Something I did just then, which I think I did like way back in episode 1, which I always like to do, is to darken the walls on the inside of the habitat in order to make it actually look like it's in the shadow that it would be. For some reason Planet Zoo's lighting engine doesn't really handle indoor as well as it does outdoor, so that's a little trick that I always like to do. So when you see them through the front door, it actually looks like it's inside. Otherwise you get this really weird effect where the back wall of a building with no windows in it is just as bright as the front door in direct sunshine, which is kind of weird looking. Time, as always, for lots and lots of lovely rocks, and that is the build done. So thank you so much for watching as always. I will see you next week for a very special episode. I'm so excited about this, I cannot wait to see it. The Flamingo Lake by Romana Palacios. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.